today I have a different video, still on the topic of Steam capsules. I have a bunch of Steam capsules here and I'm gonna show you what I did to fix them based on my humble artistic opinion. So yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, this is the post I made on Reddit. It blew up more than I fucking expected, which is fun. And yeah, that inspired me to make this video. Enough talking, let's start doing some analysis here. I managed to save some progress here in the layers. In that case, the bottom one is the one I did. Alright, so this is the original. Here's the thing, you should always use contrast in your favor. And the title of the game is really important, but sometimes, visually speaking, you have to solve a puzzle. This puzzle, almost all the time, has to do with composition and contrast. In the case of a Steam capsule, you have to deal with artworks and graphic design and title and logo design sometimes, which is something hard to do. I try to improve the contrast on the title because the original one, it was kind of bothering me that everything was too bright. So that's what I did. I made the papers a little bit older with a darker tone. Therefore, by doing that, I improved the visibility of the title. Of course, this is not a rule, this is just me doing stuff. But I also simplified the frame behind it. And you can see that I removed this fancy thing. I rotated the framing, the square framing behind it. I also made the background darker to improve even more the contrast between light and dark. So yeah, this is what I did. I also used a color dodge mode with some bluish tones here and there in the corners of the square. As you can see, that was my feedback on this particular capsule. Now the bottom one is the original. This is what I did. Simple stuff. I made the title bigger. I made the title darker. I put some blood in the corners here because the whiteness was kind of bothering me a little bit. It's just a personal thing, whatever. But it has to do with vampires, so the blood is a welcome addition, I would say. I made the lady bigger to fill in a little bit more space so you can see better from afar. I also put some lights on their eyes. I also made stuff warmer around the face. That's about it. Now, here's something that it took me a while to do. Look at the shit I've been doing, man. This is definitely not my style. Alright, so this one is really cute. I almost died looking at it. This is what I did. I made some changes to the overall composition. This is one of those feedbacks that I gave that I spent a little bit more time because it was challenging and because I had to change like the whole composition pretty much. Again, this is not a science, but I thought the empty spaces around here were not very pleasant to look at. I love the title, so I made it bigger and put in the middle. I also put the character in the middle. That way I can play around with foreground elements that can frame the picture. This is something I've learned from illustration because that's my background, but this is also useful. I do this all the time. Dark stuff in the foreground, maybe blurred sometimes. It could be branches, it could be silhouettes of characters, rocks, whatever. This helps to narrow your vision a little bit, and then you tend to focus a little bit more. This is just a detail, of course, but yeah, I also improved some contrast issues because check this out. In black and white, you can notice that the character sort of get lost in the bright areas. So this is what I did. I made the contrast a little bit more impactful, aiming for a better visual read on the character. So white against dark. This is contrast. This is what you should be thinking about when making a capsule. So I made the background darker, and by consequence of doing this, the bright character will pop in the image, just like the title as well. I also made the background a little bit darker behind the title. Alright, next. Now, this one I also have some layers. This is the original. I like this as it is, but if I had to put my finger on it, this is what I would do. I just basically improved what I already thought was cool, but again, it's just my personal take on it. Alright, let's go to the layers real quick. So first, I made the borders a little bit darker. That can sort of do the same thing as the foreground elements that I mentioned before. That can help to narrow your vision. And then I try to simplify the background with some fog, pretty much, using the same color as the background, trying to improve the shadows and the roundness of the characters. Then I added some overlay mode to improve the warm elements of the image. The muzzle flash, the action going on, you know, the fire, the shooting, the cigar, and that's pretty much it. And then I painted a little bit more on the background, trying to make the background a little bit more simplified because the characters are complex, and I thought the background was also complex because it has details, it has some vines. I tried to, you know, blend that stuff a little bit more. And my intention is to promote the characters a bit more and leave the background as the background. Then I added some shadows, trying to follow the topology of things, trying to make stuff read as something three-dimensional a little bit more. So yeah, and I just increased the brightness of things and, you know, try to make the muzzle flashes a little bit more vibrant. Put some reflections on the glasses of this main guy, and that's it. You know, just some fine details. Try to make a clear distinction between character and background here, just to, you know, bring this image a little bit more to our faces. Okay, this one, another cutesy style. I like those leaves and the pinkness of it, so I tried to promote that even further, and I made more, you know, more areas of pink, and I also bumped the warm colors around the bird here. And then here I made stuff a little bit more simpler. You can see that in the original the clouds were too white, and then here I slightly adjusted this with some gradient tool, a simple fog effect, this sort of thing here. That's pretty much it. I also improved the contrast, generally speaking, here. Sometimes I use the sharpen tool to make stuff sharper, like this. You can see the difference. Look. This is usually a final touch that I do in pretty much all my capsules. But again, cool and effective artwork as it is. Okay, so this one, very simple and effective. So this is what I did. I put the title in the middle. I made the O letter as a square and made some prism bars. But the biggest change was in the character. So this is a game about being the mafia, as far as I know. But the character here is too, you know, he looks nice, even with those fucked up scars. So this is what I did. I put some dramatic lighting, lots of shadows, lots of contrast. You can see the difference here in terms of contrast. I tried to convey an image that this guy can be dangerous, that this guy can be mysterious, and I used the Rembrandt shadows to do this. This is something you can find in photography, which is basically when, you know, there's a face here and the light is doing a triangle. This is what I tried to do. This is called the Rembrandt triangle. I mean, it looks cool and dramatic. Next, this one was kind of hard because, again, not my style and lots of stuff going on as well. So stuff were too similar in terms of contrast and values. So I tried to make stuff darker around the title, just like all the other ones pretty much. Now the title has a little bit more focus because it's brighter than the surrounding areas. Again, contrast issues. And also too much details around it, so it's hard to read at first glance. So this is what I tried to do. Here's another simple one. I just tried to improve the readability of this title because I was reading Realms Ruins because of this shape here. But anyways, this is what I first read when I saw this. So here I tried to make things a little bit more readable. So I made this thing here instead of an E shape. Improve the R here. I tried to encapsulate this whole thing. You can see here in the original it was too close to the margins. I made this line thinner as well because in the original I thought it was occupying a bigger space than it should. Here's another one. Look, in black and white you can see that the title is sort of disappearing. So you can see now that the background, the gray stuff is darker and the blue stuff is a little bit brighter. I also try to improve the bright colors and the dark colors as well. So I simplified the background here. You can see that there are lots of stuff going on. Doesn't help readability. Simplifying is a very powerful tool because those images, they need to be readable at first glance, which is something hard to do art-wise because you have to be really critical about the things you choose to put in the artwork and also the things you choose to remove from the artwork. On this one, I tried to make the background simpler again, but I also tried to change the values from the title. You can see that in the bottom one, the title itself, the words are brighter. It's a little bit confusing when you look from afar. So I tried to improve the readability by making the title darker than the background. I also simplified some clouds in the background and Yeah, generally speaking, what's happening here is also the contrast between details and non-details. The title has lots and lots of details, but also the background and also the character. So this can be a contrast issue in terms of details. So this is also something to think about when making a Steam capsule or an artwork in general. When you detail something, you are also putting some focus on it, regardless of contrast between light and shadows. Yeah, so I tried to improve the highlights here on the gun. I also tried to simplify the background as much as I could with limited time. I had to give a lot of feedback on other capsules as well. Some of them were really cool and I didn't really thought about making a paint over because they were really cool. So I just said, good job, mate. So yeah, this is what I have to say about Steam capsules. This time with some visual feedback so you can understand a little bit more about the process of making a Steam capsule. Now, to sum it up, I'm gonna draw some stuff here. You have the capsule here, and then you also have some general placements of your title, which is usually something like this. This is all the possibilities you can, place your title, pretty much. Depending on the artwork, you can rotate stuff a little bit if you want, or you can also make stuff bigger depending on, the artwork surrounding the capsule. Now, things can get a little bit more complicated with the artwork because, as I mentioned, you have to make stuff flow in a nice way. So, I don't know, just a character here with a cape and the title here. Maybe some horns or something. Okay, this is simple and effective, okay? Then, I don't know, maybe this is too simple. And then you can think about stuff to frame your title. Always trying to remember the placement of things and the safe areas to put stuff in, which is like around here, I would say, inside the zone. Here would be the no-go zone because it's too close to the border. It looks kind of weird, visually speaking. And also Steam might complain to you if you put stuff around here because this is usually where they put stuff like the demo tag or DLC tags. Another advice for people who are making their own capsules, especially devs who are not really skilled enough in the art side of things, which is reasonable, of course, I would suggest you to study photography and composition in art and photography, which can be a little bit easier to understand. Pretty much some quote-unquote rules that you can follow to make things readable. But it's not that simple. You have to consider the flow of things, and that stuff can be extremely hard. Let's say I choose to put my focus around here. I'm gonna do stuff with basic shapes. Here's my focus. Now, I do have other areas here that I could place stuff if I wanted to. But since my focus is this shape here, it's occupying a big space. Therefore, the other elements should promote that somehow. So here's a way to do it. You place smaller stuff around the area of the thirds here, and that can promote a line of reading. This is just some basic composition thing. And then, of course, here is where you put your title. Again, this is really, really open to interpretations. There's also the inherent focus of the human brain towards humanoid figures. So if you make a shape that looks like a human, you will almost instantly recognize. That is also the reason why human figures are hard to do, because of the uncanny valley. We are used to look at faces and hands and bodies all the time, and it's easier for us to understand when something is off. So maybe if you're not very good with art and you want to add some characters to your scene, you can make the characters not facing the camera. Also, pay attention to contrast. Try to make stuff read in a very good way in black and white. You can do this by adding a color layer and filling it with white or black, and just turning this on and off so you can see how it looks in terms of contrast and in terms of values. So from there you can fix your stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Feel free to hit me up on my Discord if you're looking for a Steam capsule for a game. Okay, so that's it for now. See you later.